we are going to head over to our 3 Go With Us clips, and Tiffany's going to hop off camera, and then we will have our last hour and a half or so of the raceathon. So
All
stay
right.
tuned. There's still a lot to come.
All right. See you in the chat.
Well, hello. This is day 2. God, it feels like day 10 of the American College of Rheumatology 2023. I really can't believe it's only day 2. I'm saying that. I'm talking to Deb, who's eating a nice big old potato wedge. Skin. Oh my gosh. And we are having a cocktail as well. It has been a long day. You might be able to tell just by looking at me. I am exhausted, but in a good way. So one of the things, just to bring your attention, which has been different at ACR this year, is that we have so many different meetings with potential funders that I personally haven't been able to attend as many sessions as I usually do, but that's okay because I'm still going to make sure that I attend the same amount that I always do. So we're just going to extend it out a little bit because we actually have access to sessions past while we're here in person. So over the next week, I'll be definitely reporting back so you can extend it and go with us. But I did want to give you a little bit of an update on some of the things that we've been seeing or that I've been seeing in addition to the meetings, which have been really meeting heavy, but also a session that I saw that was reviewing several different abstracts, which are summaries. They're like big posters. Imagine like a 4-foot long poster that has bullet points of summaries. That's an abstract. And so it's essentially telling you all of the latest and greatest in certain areas of our diseases. So I'm going to give a report on that as well. One of the things that I do just want to also say, because we don't just report back what we see at ACR, we explain what we're seeing, how we're seeing it, how it might be relevant to your disease journey, but also how research works so that you all understand. So something is that I just wanted to point out is we can't dictate what is here and what the researchers are presenting. So while there might be topics, tell me more about new treatments in X, or tell me more about diet, or tell me more about this particular topic that I'm interested in. The things that research flows, it ebbs and it flows. So what they're studying, they only are going to talk about things when it's time to present actual findings. It just, we don't know what we're going to come across when we come here. So I just want you to keep that in mind. And if we aren't talking about a treatment for you, or you're like, I really want to hear about this, let us know. We'll do our best to find out for you what is happening in that research. I just don't know that it will be presented in a session or something that we'll cover now, because we just can't report back on things if it's not that part in the research where they're reporting back. Anyway, I did want to just one session that I was able to go today, which I really enjoyed because it was talking about several different things that were happening in research. And it was specifically in this one around psoriatic arthritis. Now, if you don't have psoriatic arthritis, don't say, oh my gosh, I don't have psoriatic arthritis. This isn't relevant. It is relevant because I'm going to streamline it for you to tell you why, even though it wasn't psoriatic arthritis, even though it's psoriatic arthritis and it might not be your diagnosis, why it's still relevant. If you've gone with us for the last couple of years, you may have heard the term precision medicine, and that is essentially it's in the cancer space. It's been moving into the rheumatology space. And what it's doing is it's understanding subgroups. Our diseases are very unique per individual. That's why some of you respond to an Enbrel, or some of you respond to Cimzia, and then others are like, that did nothing for me. Okay, that's why we need precision medicine, or understanding subgroups. And so in doing that, there's been a lot of research in the last few years on how we can revise our research to start focusing on subgroups. So in addition to a subgroup of male and female, which tends to be a trend that we're seeing here, they're going back, and a lot of times what will happen with research is they have to start by doing what's called a literature search. That basically means there's a bunch of think about it like an intern. There's a lot of like interns that go through all of this data and all of these databases and all of these publications, and they find as many of them that they can around a certain subject. Then they cross compare them and they figure out, okay, here are some endpoints. Here are some things that were studied in this trial that were significant enough among all of these that we can then combine together and say, okay, there's enough data that this point was covered and this point was covered and this point was covered. So in one of the psoriatic trials, what they were really doing is going through all of this existing data that's out there. And they had like, when you combined it, it was over 7,000 people, and they were studying the data. And they were starting to look at these new treatments and new targets. And when I say targets, different things in our body, our molecular structure, are different signatures, different cells that, or genes that might be relevant to what you have, that might be different or might be in a subgroup with other people. And they also measure these on what they call the ACR 20 or 40, or no, that it's 50, 20, 50, 70, 90. So what that means is 20% improvement, 50% improvement, 70% improvement, 90% improvement. For us patients, we know 20%, whatever. So we always are looking for the 50, 70, 90. So they, in the ACR, in this particular new drug, which doesn't have a name yet, I'm not going to be able, it's not on market yet, but in the research, it was a lot of disease scores at 46 weeks. So think about that. If there's 52 weeks in a year, so you're looking at that, by that point, it was at a 70, there was a very large majority at a 70% ACR, which means they were reporting that they were 70% better. And in many cases, 90% better. That's big. So that is very promising. What I also really enjoyed about this study, and in the other studies that they were showing, is they're talking about enthesitis, and they're measuring enthesitis, which is different than joint involvement. It is often very prevalent in the spondyloarthritis diseases. So even axial spondyloarthritis, Crohn's disease, anything that falls under the spondy diseases, it is the inflammation of the tendons that connect to the bone. And so there's a lot of talk been for the last few years on enthesitis, and there was a lot of improvement in the enthesitis alone, and they did a complete breakout segment of that. So that in itself, if you have one of these diseases, is important to note, because they're not just looking at your typical joints or things that keep us in an umbrella. The other thing that I want to report back is there was a new word. We love new words. A new word. We have a glossary that we will share with you, and we try to keep these new words coming up, or even words that we might know that you hear and you're like, I don't know that. Let us know, because we want to add them to the glossary. It was called and I don't even know if I can say it, enthalgia. It was a cross between enthesitis and fibromyalgia. Wait, do that again. So I have to look this up. But when he said it, I went, what? I haven't heard that one yet. So they were talking about pain and pain tolerances, which also seems to be another big one here at ACR. And they were talking about how even though people with fibromyalgia weren't included in this study, particularly because there was an endpoint on measuring pain, still they were looking into this enthalgia or something. I got to go back and play it to say exactly how to exactly say it. But essentially, it is the nerve involvement in additional with enthesitis, because fibromyalgia is nerves. So that was just a new word. I didn't even know there was a measurement. I didn't know they were talking about it. Anyway, the other one was about precision medicine, and they called it immune cell profiling. And essentially, very complex. I have many slides that I can share in a more specific overview, but essentially they were starting to figure out how to eliminate the geneity in our diseases, which means they're all individual per person, and we're talking about the subgroups. So they're trying to eliminate that, and by doing that, they're looking into different cell structures, how some of your genes all group together, how some of your cells, what are inflamed, what's not, all grouped together. And they're doing this for psoriatic arthritis, but not just that. It's just the study that I saw today. So why is that important to you? Essentially, it's by understanding it, and that creating a thing that all of our diseases are not exactly this, are totally different. They're creating these subgroups. That's why we're seeing male and female. They're starting to look back at old research. They're starting to see who's responding to what are the symptoms. How can we differentiate these diseases so they're not just glumped up in a like one big disease. So that's exciting for all of us. So I just really wanted to report back on that. And I have hit my limit of 10 minutes. I will do a separate one so I can give you a little bit of an update on the meetings that I did.
Good morning, everybody. Today is Wednesday. It's our last day here, and we've gone to see so many different things. As you can see, it's daytime. I wasn't able to do my debrief last night because my brain was a little fried and I was definitely brain fogging. Yesterday was a day where things like words coming out of my mouth was not happening. So I wanted to give you a follow-up and some more information on the 2 other sessions I did attend. And the first one we did together with Tiffany, and Kenny gave you some highlights. And this one was from 2 different rheumatologists, and it was cardiovascular rheumatology, lessons learned from targeting inflammation to modulate, so control the cardiovascular risk. And this first rheumatologist was really key on pointing out some very interesting things. The first thing she was talking about was atherosclerosis. So that is part of cardiovascular disease, and that's the plaque that shows up in your vessels. And she was talking about that and autoimmunity. So there's definitely a growing relationship, and they even questioned is our atherosclerosis, so cardiovascular disease, is it actually an autoimmune disease itself? What an interesting question, huh? They talked about the different things. So the plaque, the calcium that kind of forms inside your vessel to block the blood flows from flowing quite so easily. The thrombosis formation, so not being able to clot so well. The elasticity, so the flexibility of your vessels, whether it's arteries or veins and things like that, versus getting to be more hardened and not doing so well. Is it more than just a relationship? Good question. The next question, again, like she said, is it actually going to be considered a autoimmune disease at some point? Because there's so many shared pathways and the mechanisms of how they're treated and things like that. Because as you'll hear me say, they've been looking at how they're treating cardiovascular disease, colchicine, as well as they're using TNF inhibitors, which are the same drugs that they treat our diseases for. So that's an interesting crossover. They're using methotrexate, and they were seeing some promise with that. And also the glucocorticoids like the prednisones and the steroid shots that we often hear about. So you'll hear my voice is a little froggy. We were up late last night and we had a lot of fun catching up with friends, but I think my voice has had it over these couple days. So excuse my voice, but we were talking about, let me get to the actual take home points because I think that summed a lot of this up. First, we need to make sure that we're recognizing the cardiovascular risks that are a part of our diseases. And there's a lot of assessment tools out there. We need to make sure that our rheumatologists are actually looking at the crossover, managing the known cardiovascular risks, using NSAIDs. So those are things like our Motrin and over-the-counter Celebrex, those type of things that are taking the inflammation out of our bodies. Using those with more caution because they tend to cause really higher than they ever imagined, risks to our cardiovascular system and having cardiovascular events. Using corticosteroids at the lowest dose and for the shortest amount of time possible. I'm speaking from experience. I've been on steroids since 13 years old. So I've been on steroids. I'm down to a smaller dose. I'm on 4 milligrams, but it's amazing, something that is cheap, but how effective it is, but how much damage can happen from that. So the overall piece of this message was making sure we're keeping tight control on our disease activity, because the inflammation is not good for our hearts. So that was the overall message of that session. I'm going to try to keep skipping ahead because I have another session I want to talk about as well. Let's see. I'm so sorry. I'm just flipping through my slides quick because there were so many of them. But the one other speaker we had was definitely talking about inflammation is definitely the center of cardiovascular disease in our autoimmune populations. They are using low dose colchicine because, as I said in Tiffany's video, that it is now FDA approved as of June of 2023. And there are large size of event, like there's a large population of patients like us that are doing so well with having colchicine added. The only caution is they've got to really keep track of drug interactions, and also look at the counterindications and looking at our blood work for our liver and our kidney health. Good things to keep track of. And the next session I wanted to go into was about diet. It was optimizing diet to improve outcomes in rheumatoid arthritis and lupus. So what are the evidence? So she talked a lot about different studies. One study in particular was the Mediterranean diet, which many of us know. It is using fruits, vegetables, olive oils, legumes, low-fat dairy, lean poultry, fish, things like that, and limiting the sugar and red meats and processed foods. So they did Mediterranean diet versus a regular diet and had people do it for 12 days. And the outcomes were incredible. There was a lot of weight loss, and there was a huge number of as you've heard us talk about, the DAS28. So that's a joint count. So when we go to our rheumatologist, they do a joint count to see what is inflamed. Greater reduction in the joint count than they ever expected. So I thought that was very interesting. They talked about teaching Mediterranean cooking classes versus people just learning about it. So just reading about it versus teaching them. And this study was in 2007. And the overall conclusion was that a lot of people dropped out of this because they found it difficult and didn't have the time to be doing cooking and things like that. So they didn't see a real positive correlation in that one. But I thought it was still, again, interesting to see. But the vegan and a gluten-free diet, so that is no animal products, so no butter, no fish, pork, tuna, any of those type of things, and just a fruit, vegetable, and incorporating it also being gluten-free. So they used RA patients who were doing well, and they also went against a well-balanced diet. And a lot of people had difficulty doing a vegan diet. It wasn't really their particular choice because, again, you want to use food and you've got to use it. You've got to enjoy your food. There's another study that I want to touch base on in a little bit, so stay tuned for a few on that one. And I'm going to continue on another video, so stay tuned.
Hey everybody, this is Layla, Health Education Manager here at AiArthritis, and ready to report back on some information that I got from day 2 of ACR Go With Us. So excited to be here with you all. It has been a journey being here. Of course, when you're actually in person and you have a bunch of patients that are doing this Go With Us program, there's always things that pop up and schedules that get veered and things that might pop up. So it's been a hectic few days, but it's been so much fun. And my body is doing okay. I'm getting through it. I feel compared to last year that I'm able to withstand all of the walking and talking and getting through the day with a good amount of energy. So I feel like that's improved for me. So that's good. But that's why we're here. We're here to make ourselves known, let everybody know what AI arthritis does so that we can keep doing it. So I'm so excited to let you know about a few of the things that I found out about reproductive issues in rheumatic disease and some studies that are going on in that area. So let's go. Okay, so the first the first abstract has to do with tacrolimus use in pregnancy. And it was from 2 Japanese researchers that said that there was no significant impact on any of the reproductive or any of the issues that were possible with the tacrolimus use having to do with kidneys and blood pressure and all of that. There was no significant impact in the pregnancy that caused any issues with the pregnancy while using tacrolimus during it. And so this is just the beginning stages of these studies to see how safe tacrolimus is for pregnancy. If it continues to be this, once they keep studying it, it should take a few years for it to even officially be recommended by rheumatologists. So it takes a little while for these medications to be able to actually be used, even though there are some studies saying that it's safe. And yeah, so that's another possible medication that could be pregnancy safe or could be deemed pregnancy safe in the next few years. The next abstract was very cool. It was about a program that a rheumatologist put together in order to teach other rheumatologists about reproductive health having to do with pregnancy and also preventing pregnancy for those who are not trying to have a baby and prevent flares from any unexpected pregnancies. And they basically said that they piloted this program of doing virtual training with rheumatologists so they can feel more comfortable talking about reproductive health with their patients. They got very good feedback. They're trying to get it through ACR to have it as a regular training. And the feedback said they said that they felt that they learned a lot and that they would continue to do trainings if there were more available. So that's awesome. I apologize. Okay, the next there is studies showing that not like untimely pregnancies that are not medically optimized or unplanned basically cause higher risk for patients. Something that may seem very like common sense. Oh yeah, like an ill-timed pregnancy, like when your lupus or your RA or your Sjogren's is flaring, can definitely cause a lot of issues. But definitely when you are trying to prove something, you have to make sure that there's studies, right? So even though if something sounds like it's pretty self-explanatory, there needs to be studies in order for there to be any change or for there to be training to be able to have rheumatologists speak to patients about this. It's really important for patients to be able to get this information. So I'm glad that this study is showing that, yes, there is lots of risk with having an untimely pregnancy, that patients really need to be able to be educated about that from their rheumatologists or the rheumatology offices. And again, untimely or ill-timed pregnancies have to do with Basically, you're not in the right state of your disease, or your disease is not in remission when trying to get pregnant or having an unplanned pregnancy. So it makes patients at risk for poor pregnancy outcomes, social disadvantage having to do with health insurance or income. It increases SLE or other rheumatic disease activity, and also inappropriate medication use happens very often. When you don't know that you're pregnant, how are you supposed to know that you're supposed to stop taking your medications? And there's so many medications that you aren't able to take while pregnant that it's very hard to know if you were not educated. And if anybody is specifically wondering about your rheumatic condition or your AiArthritis disease, you can go to mothertobaby.org and basically find out, you can search your specific condition. And this isn't even, it's not just limited to AiArthritis diseases or rheumatic conditions. They do have a lot of guidelines for just medication use in general by condition. So if you have psoriatic arthritis, you can Google or you can search psoriatic arthritis on their database, and they will have a list of usual medications that are used for psoriatic arthritis and if they are pregnancy safe or not. So that is a really good resource, Mother to Baby, if you are interested in looking at those lists. The last one was talking about adolescents and young adults, and if they are getting educated about reproductive health in general and their rheumatology appointments. And it said about half were told that having an untimely pregnancy would be very risky for their disease, but about less than half actually fully felt that they understood what was being talked about during that conversation. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done in rheumatology where patients are being properly educated about the risk of pregnancy and why preventing pregnancy can be very important and beneficial to one's health. Alrighty, if you have any questions, let me know. You can send a reply to this email, or you can go ahead and message us on any of our social medias. Again, this is Layla with AiArthritis Health.
All right, I am back momentarily. I was just laughing because why did both of the videos that I was in today, why was I sick? I guess it just goes to show that I am an autoinflammatory arthritis patient, because of course I'm getting sick after, or I'm sick all the time. So that was funny.